Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to be sharing with you a requested tutorial on how to cut this asymmetric neckline princess dart blouse. So if this is something you like, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up. So let's dive right into today's video. So to start my pattern, I've marked out my basic measurements of my shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, and shoulder to waistline. So for my top length, I added about 6 inches to get the top length. So I'll go ahead and mark my shoulder divided by 2. I'll be adding ½ inch to it because this dress has a sleeve, and I'll come down by 1 inch. After that point, I'll just go ahead and connect. Now I'll be marking a neckline, a basic neckline of 3 by 3 inches. Go ahead to place my curved drew and connect. Next step you want to take is to find your chest line, which is also your armhole, and you're going to use your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5. What I have on the shoulder, I'll mark and make sure I have a straight line at that point. Now I'll just go ahead to draw out my chest line area, and this is what I have. After I'm done marking, I'm going to go ahead to fold up my tape and mark. Come in by ½ inch. At the chest line, I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4. Go ahead to connect from that point to the shoulder point. And after I'm done marking that, I'll be marking my nipple to nipple on my bust pan divided by 2. Mine is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches. So I'll just mark that all the way to the lower part of my blouse. And after that, I'll just go ahead and connect this till I get to the top length. After I'm done marking that, I'm just going to be marking my dart intake of 1 inch on both sides of my pattern. For a plus size, you're going to use 1.5 inches. And I'll just go ahead to take this all the way down to the lower part of my pattern this way. So after I'm done connecting that, the next step I want to take is to connect from the under bust to the bust line, and also repeat this at the other side of my pattern. After I'm done doing this, the next step is to go ahead and divide my armhole into 2 again and mark. Now I will be connecting from that point down to my bust line this way to create the princess dart effect. And now I'll be marking a dart intake of ½ inch on both sides, but before I do that, I'll just go ahead to outline my pattern. So next, I'll be marking a dart intake of ½ inch on both sides of this pattern, and after marking that, I'll be blending it into the main line that I have at the armhole point. So after I'm done marking this, I'll use my marker to outline the new ½ inch I have on the armhole line, and I'll go ahead to blend it into my bust. So after I'm done doing this, I'll just go ahead to extend that dart intake of ½ inch on both sides, making it 1 inch. I'll take it out. Now I'll place my curved drew, and I'm going to go ahead to connect, creating my new armhole. So the reason why we're doing this is to make sure that one side of the pattern does not get longer. That is the part at the side does not get shorter than the part at the middle. Now I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4, and I'll be marking this dart intake of 1 inch, and I'll go ahead to replace that. So when you're sewing, if you have excess on your armhole, you can just go ahead to trim it out. Mark your under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace, and add your sewing allowance. Mark your waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, and add your sewing allowance. Now on the top length, you're going to mark your hip circumference divided by 4, add your sewing allowance, and replace the dart. So for the hip, you can decide to add extra 1 inches to your hip because of the effect we have at the blouse at the lower part. So I'll just go ahead and cut out the rest of my pattern before we go ahead to alter the pattern to get our design. Now I'm just going to open it and transfer all my measurements to the other side. So after I'm done doing that, this is what I have. So we'll be starting off with the neckline of the dress. So from the shoulder, I'll be coming down by 2.5 inches at this point. Now I'm just going to go ahead to connect it this way. After I'm done connecting, I'm just going to extend that line downwards, and it's going to meet at the center of my pattern this way. And now I'm just going to take it straight a bit, and then I'm going to slant it down, going towards the that line I have at the other side of the pattern. So I'm not too comfortable with what I have here, and I'm just going to blend it out when drawing it out with my marker at that point. So I'll just go ahead and extend it all the way down. So if you notice at the lower part, we have like almost ½ inch at that part. So from the neckline here, I'll go in or go out by 1 inch, and I'll connect it to that 2.5 inches we have here. Now I'll come down by ½ inch from this point and extend my line about 5 to 6 inches. Then place my tape at this point. I'll come down by 6.5 inches close to the princess darts at that point, and I will connect this. So this is what I have here, and I'll come down by ½ inch from my chest line, or you can just use your bust point, and I will go ahead to connect. So this is what I have here right now. Now the next step is just to go ahead to work on the lower part of this pattern, and I'm going to come up by 1.5 inch at this point. So to draw out the other side of your pattern, you blend in your dart this way and mark. Now I'll place my tape, and I'll come up by 2.5 inches from this side, and I'm going to go ahead to connect. On this side also, I'm just going to leave here, and I'll be coming up by 2.5 from this point, and I'll go ahead to connect this all the way to the other side of the pattern. And when I'm connecting, I'll blend in my dart this way to make sure that the dart lines will match when I'm connecting or when I'm sewing the pattern. So this is what I have, and I'm just going to go ahead to cut out this pattern. But before I do that, I'll extend the neckline here by ½ inch to match what we have at the thumbnail. So after this, I'll just go ahead and number my pattern, and I'll go ahead to cut it out so that I don't misplace the number 1 part for the number 4, because they are slightly similar. So I'll just go ahead and cut out my pattern. So if you have any question on this particular tutorial, please leave your question at the comment section, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and also leave your comment at the comment section, and also share this video too. So for the center part of this pattern, which is number 2 and 3, you'll be adding 1 inch in front instead of half, because half will be used to turn the dress like a bias in front, and the other half will be used to top stitch the dress like an overlap in front of the dress. So after that, I've gone ahead to cut out the back pattern, and I added a zipper in front. That's the only difference between the front and the back. So I'll go ahead and divide my armhole into 2 mark, and I will mark my bust circumference divided by 4 on this point. Go ahead to come out by ½ inch just like we did for the front, and I'll connect this all the way up. So after I'm done doing this, I'll just go ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, and I'll mark it at the under bust, also mark it at the waistline, and go down to my top length. So after I'm done doing this, I'll just go ahead to place my ruler, and I'll connect, drawing out a straight line at those points. So I'll just go ahead and draw mark ½ inch, sorry, at both sides, and I will connect and also connect at this side. So I want to use a straight dart for the back. Now I went down by 1 inch from the bust line, and I'll go ahead to connect my darts here. So after I'm done connecting, I will go ahead to mark my bust circumference divided by 4, add my sewing allowance. At the under bust, I'll mark my under bust circumference divided by 4 and add my sewing allowance, replace the dart. Mark my waist circumference divided by 4, replace the dart, and add the sewing allowance together at once. Then mark my hip circumference divided by 4, measure this dart intake of 1 inch here, and add my sewing allowance. So remember, at the hip point, you can go ahead and add extra 1 inch at your hip just to get that effect we have at the lower part. So this is what I have for the back pattern after I'm done cutting out. Now So I'll go ahead and mark a basic neckline of 3 by 2 inches at the back neckline. You can use 3 inches by 1.5, although we are still going to adjust it. So I marked ½ inch at the waistline because I want to get rid of the bulginess at the back. I'll extend that dart upwards and downwards this way, and this is what I have here. Go ahead to mark 2.5 inches at the waistline, just like we have in front of the pattern, and I will connect. So this is what I have for the back pattern, and I'll go ahead to outline the neckline and the armhole area and also the sides of the pattern. So after I'm done doing this, I'll just go ahead to cut out my pattern. After I'm done cutting this, the next step is just to go ahead to readjust the neckline. So on one part of the neckline, you remember we went in by ½ inch. So now I'll mark that ½ inch and I will reconnect. So to cut one side of your back, you're going to be using this because at one side of the neckline we took our ½ inch. So on the other side of the neckline we took out 1 inch. All I'll do is just to go ahead to add ½ inch to this, so half to it will make it 1 inch. So I'll use that to cut the other neckline, and with this we have come to the end of today's tutorial.